Alright, I'm back again with another recent gaming. I have 6 games here that I've completed, or at least played enough to talk about them and form some kind of an opinion on. So, in the Silent Hill 2 remake review, which was a massive, almost 3-hour long video, and got some good responses to it, so thanks for that. I mentioned the game Withering Rooms and how I was playing it rather than replaying the Silent Hill 2 remake, which I still haven't got around to doing, by the way. I mentioned this game, and I have to praise this game a lot. I enjoyed Withering Rooms a lot. One of the best games I've played in a long time, and a complete surprise as well. I didn't know what to expect from it. I saw that it had a overwhelmingly positive review average on Steam, and decided to just impulse buy the physical for the PS5, and I'm really glad that I did. So what this is a bizarre combination of survival horror and a 2D, well, a 2.5D, but really a 2D action game. It's not a platformer, really. It's just a straight up action game. So it's a survival horror 2D action game with RPG elements. There's a level up system and all kinds of accessories, rings and stuff that you collect and upgrade your character with. But it's also a roguelite, so every time you die, the mansion that you start at, it resets. You lose all of your items, you lose your progress. Well, not all of your items, but a bunch of your items. So you have to play the same stuff over and over and over again in order to get better at the game, get better items, and be able to progress. So lots of different things going on with this game. Now, how does it all come together really well? The roguelite elements are kind of annoying at the start of the game, because this is a very difficult game, at least when you first start it. You die very quickly, you have very weak items, weapons, everything. And it took me around, let's say, 1 or 2 hours to really get into it. But once I did, I realized that the roguelite elements don't really matter that much. There is a story reason for them. That's the main point for having them in the game. I'm not going to spoil anything about, like usual, I'm not going to spoil anything about these games except for some of the early stuff maybe. So at the start of the game, you just keep dying and you lose all of your items, and it's kind of annoying and frustrating at times, but you upgrade your character very quickly. You gain permanent upgrades very quickly, and the game gets a lot easier. There is a massive difficulty spike around the middle portion of the game that took, again, some time to adjust to. But yeah, once you get over these little spikes in difficulty, the game is very enjoyable to play. The combat reminds me a little bit of this War of Mine, bizarrely, in that it is very, very, very slow and inaccurate. The movements of your character and the enemies and the hitboxes, it feels very inaccurate, but not in necessarily a bad way. It gives the game this weird sense of well, it enhances the survival horror aspects of it in a way. You are just a little girl with a meat cleaver or an axe or something, and you just swing it around. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you roll and the enemy hits you, sometimes you roll and the enemy doesn't hit you. So this War of Mine, for those who have played it, is also a 2D game where there is combat, and the combat is notoriously difficult, and not because of how good the AI is, but just how difficult it is to control the characters and just actually hit anything or even dodge anything, right? So it reminds me a bit of this War of Mine, this game's combat, and it also reminds me of games such as Salt and Sanctuary. So it does have a little bit of that Souls-like feel to it, where you are rolling to dodge attacks and your animations are quite slow, and you have to keep an eye on all of these like health bars and stuff. So yeah, the survival horror comes most in the aesthetic. There's a little bit of a Resident Evil mansion thing going on. There's also some Silent Hill references quite clearly. You move between this real world and this nightmarish cursed world, and the cursed world looks a lot like Silent Hill 1 in many places, with these rusty walls and all the wiring and the sort of metallic walls and surfaces and this sort of thing. So there are many references to old school horror games for those who know their stuff from the PS1 era and maybe even earlier than that. The RPG elements are quite light. You have a leveling up system. It's not the most robust thing. It reminds me of something like Dark Souls, where you have maybe 10 or so things to upgrade. Some of them are completely worthless, and some of them are extremely important. The game relies heavily on either ranged combat with magic or melee combat with these melee weapons like swords and stuff, and you kind of have to pick one or two, because you can't upgrade both to a efficient level to be able to survive. I've read online that people have complained that the melee combat is too weak late in the game. I played through the whole game with melee combat, with the hand axe and just using bleed build up. I think it worked pretty well. So yeah. And in the Silent Hill 2 remake, I mentioned that I played through the game 4 times, so I got the Platinum Trophy for it. It took me around 20 hours to first finish it for the first new game playthrough, and the rest of the playthroughs were quite fast to get through, because once you know what you're doing, you can just run through enemies. Once you beat the game once, there is also New Game Plus content. There is an extra ending that unlocks, and some new characters and a new boss and everything that you have to find. So it's definitely worth replaying at least once. It took me around 6.5 hours to do the new content, which is far more difficult than the main game. It's basically a hard mode that you have to turn on. It's a hard mode that you can turn on and off whenever you feel like, but if you have it on, you get extra loot, and you need that loot to unlock the extra ending. So it's worth playing at least twice. And the third and the fourth playthrough, you can do them in less than an hour once you know what you're doing and you take the hard mode stuff off. So I enjoyed Withering Rooms a lot, as you can probably tell from me praising this. One thing also to mention here at the end of this mini review is that it was developed mainly by just one guy, or at least in the credits it mentions one guy's name and then some extra credits for, I think, music and stuff like that. But very impressive game for a single developer, a very small indie team effort here with this game. So I'm definitely looking forward to what he does next, if he decides to develop another game. Yeah, Withering Rooms, also great atmosphere, great music. The music is not really anything I've heard in other games. There's lots of piano tracks, lots of also, well, you have this sort of industrial electronic music that kind of reminds me of Silent Hill as well at times. But I was just standing there when I entered a new room, just listening to the music. And I very rarely do that in a video game, just stopping and listening to the music. So yeah, I'll give Withering Rooms a strong 9 out of 10. I think it's, if you're looking for a horror game on a PS5, and you aren't necessarily looking for a AAA quality. It is obviously an indie game, so it doesn't have the same amount of polish that a game like Silent Hill 2 Remake has. But as a video game, I much prefer this over Silent Hill 2 Remake, and that's just my preference, I guess. Right. Let's do Rival Megagun next. I played this shoot 'em up title. Comes in this nice box. Has a manual and all kinds of stuff that I'll flip through. It's a shoot 'em up game. It's all right. It has a very interesting idea with that. It's a PvP, so player versus player, either a human versus human or a human versus computer shoot 'em up game. So you're playing against another player. The screen is split in half from the middle, so it's a split screen game, and you have to play a shoot 'em up game. You dodge bullets and destroy enemies, and the better you do, the more stuff you summon on the other side for the other player to play against. So it has this kind of cool idea. How well does it work? It's fine, I guess. Sometimes the AI is completely incompetent. So the main game mode here is the arcade mode, or your typical story mode. Has, if I remember correctly, 7 levels, which are quite short. Once you beat your opponent, the level ends. So there isn't like a boss or anything, except for at the end of the game there is a boss and a true boss as well. If you beat the game without using continues, you get the true ending. It's very short, very simple. The AI is sometimes completely incompetent and gets killed immediately. Sometimes it's ridiculously difficult. I didn't get to play this against another human player who is good at shoot 'em up games. So I guess the game would be best played with someone who is really good at shoot 'em up games. So you're going to get a long match going on. That would be kind of fun, but I don't know any. I don't have any friends who are into this sort of games. So I did play it against another human player, but he was so. If you're watching this, sorry, but really bad at the game. So it wasn't much of a challenge to just beat him over and over and over again. So it wasn't that much fun, but. If you have other people you know who are into shoot 'em up titles, I can see this game being very, very enjoyable and very fun. The single player experience was fine. It's very grindy. If you're going for trophies, it's extremely grindy. You have to play hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of matches. And for some of the trophies, it counts arcade matches. So you can just set up a match, do custom setup for it, how many rounds, how difficult the AI is, all kinds of stuff. There's loadouts, you unlock items, you can equip those and get some special effects on your ships and everything like that. But for some trophies, you can only get them by playing the story mode. And playing the story mode is kind of boring because it's always the same thing. You have multiple characters, some of them are good, some of them are not really that good. They have different special attacks, but for the most part, they play quite similarly in the end. There isn't much of a difference between them. But yeah, it's fine. Rival Megagun. If you're looking for a shoot 'em up title, it's not the worst one out there. Next up, I finished a game that I started a long time ago. This is Mineko's Night Market. I started playing this, I think, last year at some point, and I just had other stuff come up and I had to put it in my backlog for a moment, but now I finished it. Plays a little bit like Moonlighter, if you know that game, where you scavenge items and you craft stuff from them and then you sell them. Like Mineko's Night Market, there's a night market that you sell items at. But this one doesn't really have any combat. This does have stealth elements to it. So It's also very similar to farming games like Stardew Valley. You have a calendar with a seasonal cycle, so you have spring, summer, autumn, December. You have different items showing up around the map during the different seasons and everything like that. And you play like every day. You have an energy bar, and you can do a set amount of things with that energy bar. The difference between this and something like Stardew Valley is that this is very heavy on story. So there is a mystery going on. There's this god cat thing called Nico, who is rumored to exist or maybe not exist. And of course you run into him, and he has a problem that you have to solve and everything like that. And then you go on this big quest with your friends trying to help this massive cat thing. This game has a lot of cats in it, which is a positive, as you can tell from the logo of the developers, Meowza Games. There are cats everywhere in this game, so that's cool. The writing is very funny, and the game is very well written as well. Exceptionally well written, I would say. According to the credits, this is mostly, I guess, developed by two people, and I guess they are a husband and a wife, or a man and a woman with some kind of a relationship to one another. Maybe they are sister and brother. I don't know. I think they had a last name, same last name. But yeah. So again, a game developed by a small team, and I think it was very fun. So, oh yeah, Rival Megagun, like a light 7 out of 10. I forgot to say that. For Minagos Night Market, I'll give it a strong 7 out of 10. I enjoyed my time. The gameplay loop is very repetitive, especially once you get farther into the game and you're looking for specific materials to craft specific items. You always go to the same places to gather them. And there are a couple of materials that you have to grind a lot of, which is quite annoying. So yeah, the end game is more grinding than I would have hoped for. The early game is much more enjoyable, but the more you play, the more grindy it gets, which was a bit of a disappointment. So I didn't enjoy the end game as much as I did the early game, but otherwise, it's good. Yeah, I also mentioned that there are stealth sections. So there are these sections when you enter for the first time a new area, you have to do these stealth puzzle things where there are like special agents who have captured cats into cages. You have to figure out how to like save the cats, release the cats from the cages, and you have to sneak around and do stuff like that. So yeah, Minagos Night Market, strong 7 out of 10, fun game. If you're looking for a simple little fun game to play on the side, Minagos Night Market is a good choice. Next up, let's do a PS3 game, Tekken Tag Tournament 2. Lots of 7s here. I'll give this one a solid 7 out of 10 as well. I don't like this one as much as I do the original Tekken Tag Tournament. I think they went too far with all of the tag moves and everything. It's very convoluted and complicated. And some of the controls are quite inaccurate as well, I think, or at least on a DualShock controller, they were quite inaccurate. So it wasn't easy to pull off some of the tag moves. This also has a pretty bad tutorial mode. There's a tutorial mode where you have this combat, this robot thing that you control and you have to do different moves. It didn't really make much sense what they were teaching you. They were teaching, like some of the first lessons in that thing are just completely unnecessary moves that I don't really see why a newcomer would need to know. For some reason, the more I played the tutorial, the worse I got at playing the game itself, because I was thinking about all of these special moves and these extra things. Why are there so many tag moves in this game? It's just stupid with the tag assaults and the tag, like grab tag attacks. I can't even remember what they are called. There are so many of them. There are at least 3 or 4 different kinds of tag moves. So it's Tekken Tag Tournament. So you have a team of 2 characters and you tag one in and the other out. And there are these special moves involved with it where you have to press all kinds of button combinations to pull them off, and it gets really, really stupidly complicated. The first one was much more like just regular Tekken. I think the second one went a bit too far. One good thing about this game is that it has almost all of the characters from the history of the series. So there are over 40 characters here. A lot of different possibilities that you can choose from. I always played Jack, the robot guy. He's very strong in this game. I liked him a lot here. Jinpachi as well. Some good characters. Alisa as well, and Asuka. But yeah, it's Tekken. It's Tekken Tag Tournament. It's alright. It's nowhere near the best games in the series. For the PS3, I definitely prefer Tekken 6 over this. It's just more simple and clean than your typical Tekken. But yeah, it's a nice variation to the Tekken. Your typical Tekken game that you have. So yeah, Tekken Tag Tournament 2. It's good. It's all right. One thing that I thought that was kind of weird is that you have all of these characters and they all have their ending movies, but you only get the movie for the first character you select and not the whole tag team. That was very weird. So you have to play the game. If you want all of the ending scenes and you don't want to grind this, what is the like ghost battle game mode where you just continuously keep on battling new CPU enemies that are getting more and more difficult. If you don't want to grind that and unlock ending videos that way, you have to play the arcade mode just over and over and over again to unlock all of the endings. So very grindy game as well. Right, I have 2 more games here. Let's bring back Castlevania Advance Collection. So I think last time I talked about Circle of the Moon, and now I have completed Harmony of Dissonance, which is the second one here. Harmony of Dissonance was a breeze to get through compared to Circle of the Moon. Circle of the Moon was ridiculously difficult at times. Harmony of Dissonance, quite easy. I didn't have any problems with basically any of the bosses. Even the final boss of the game is very easy to get through. And even the true boss, the final boss, is quite simple. Very weird to be playing through Harmony of Dissonance after Circle of the Moon, having had all of the trouble getting through that game and just grinding levels to even be able to finish some of the areas. In Circle of the Moon, the arena, the optional arena fight area, I grinded myself to level 70 to even get through that, or maybe like 68 or something. Here, level 49, I just beat the game and 100% completed it. No problems at all. Now, as a game, it's very similar to Circle of the Moon. The gameplay, the music, the graphics, quite similar. For some reason, maybe my memory is playing tricks on me, but I remember Circle of the Moon looking better than this game, which is strange because this is a later game. Especially when people are talking and there are the text box and all of the text box have a portrait of the person talking next to them. The portraits were quite low quality. The drawings or like the pixel art for them was quite low quality. Also, some of the backgrounds looked like Earthbound on the SNES. Not a huge fan of that, although Earthbound is a great game. I like that game a lot. I wouldn't expect Castlevania to look like Earthbound with the squiggly lines in the background, all of that stuff. So I wasn't impressed by how it looked. The theme song of Harmony of Dissonance is fantastic. Some of the other music is kind of hit or miss. Again, I think Circle of the Moon beats this. Overall, I enjoyed Circle of the Moon more than Harmony of Dissonance, but they are similar to one another. They are Game Boy Advance games, so and developed like a year apart from one another. So they are all similar to one another, very much so. But yeah, Circle of the Moon as a complete experience, I think, was more exciting. Harmony of Dissonance, I was just running through the game, one-shotting enemies all the time. The enemies were very easy to play against, very easy to beat, and the bosses as well. But yeah, it's Castlevania. It's a 2D Castlevania game, directed by Igarashi. So you know what you're going to get if you get into this. So I'm feeling a strong 7 out of 10, maybe a light 8 out of 10 on Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance. Maybe it's more of an 8 out of 10, I'm not sure. Doesn't really matter. It's an alright game. And then lastly, I platinumed Astro Bot on the PS5. Now, is this game a game of the year? Not necessarily. I mean, Balatro is pretty good. But is it a very enjoyable 3D platformer? Yes, I liked Astro Bot a lot. Maybe one thing that I don't really like about the game is how heavily it leans on the PlayStation stuff. This was also the case for the previous one, Astro's Playroom, the free game for the PS5. In that game, you are basically building a PS5. In here, you are repairing a broken PS5. So you are collecting the different components and putting them into the machine and so on. So I kind of wish that Astro Bot would just leave the most explicit PS5, PS4, PlayStation stuff behind and become its own thing. In the long run, it could be a detriment to the series to be this heavily reliant. Like if the next Astro Bot game is you building a PS6, I'll be pissed off. I hope that the next Astro Bot game is its own thing, because it's good enough to stand on its own legs. It doesn't need all of the PlayStation branding slapped all across it, right? Now, I did enjoy many of the bots. There are hundreds of bots, and many of them are references to old school PlayStation and newer PlayStation franchises. There are even special levels designed around certain franchises. The first one, which I'm not going to spoil, is definitely my favorite one. It's maybe like 1.5 hours, an hour into the game, you get to this special level in a PS1 game series that hasn't existed for a long time, really has been dormant for a long time. So I'm hoping for a new game in that series as well. Lots of variety in the gameplay. Reminds me a lot of Mario. Many of the ideas are clearly, well, I don't want to use the word stolen, but lovingly copied from Super Mario games. You have all of these different power-ups that you use to get through the levels and to be able to collect all of the bots and other loot and hidden items that are hidden around the maps. The game was surprisingly long. I've heard from people that they beat this in 2 days. I don't understand how, because it took me around, let's say, 18 hours to get through the whole game and platinum it. So, I mean, if you play it 9 hours per day, you can finish it in 2 days, but it took me 4 days, I guess, 4 or 5 days to get through the whole thing and platinum it. Very enjoyable platinum, not very difficult, quite easy, but also has some challenge to it. There is multiple free download packs for the game that add new content, speedruns and stuff. I did also all of that content. There's a Christmas level that unlocks after you beat the whole game. That was really fun as well. So lots of content, lots of good times, really good controls, tight controls. One of the best 3D platformers on the PlayStation systems, definitely. There aren't really that many to compete with it, but hoping for a renaissance of 3D platformers on Sony consoles after Astro Bot. So I'll give this a solid 9 out of 10. And there we go. That's the stuff that I've been playing recently. I'll be back quite soon with some other stuff, collecting videos and everything like that. So I'll see you again in some time. Bye.